They can hear you, but they can't see. There, they can see you. You have to listen to me because I'm your mother. Did you get me a Mother's Day card? You didn't. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you all of the physical books that I have rated 5 stars in the past year. There are definitely some more books that I either read on Libby or I read on Kindle Unlimited that I rated 5 stars, but that's way too many books to put in one video. I might do a separate video of like Kindle 5-star reads that I had. Today I'm just going to be sharing with you all of the ones that I own. I have 14 different 5-star reads. If I give a book a 5-star read, it can go one or two ways. It can either be a complete masterpiece and it was beautifully written, or I only just had a wonderful time and I kind of keep my rose-colored glasses on and I can recognize that it may not be the best book in the entire world or a literary masterpiece, but I had so much freaking fun with it, so I'm gonna give it 5 stars. Go either way. Let's get straight into it. First up, we have Empire of Storms by Sarah J. Maas. This is the only book in Sarah's Throne of Glass series that I rated 5 stars. I didn't give Kingdom of Ash, the last book in the series, 5 stars because I felt like it dragged on a little bit longer than I would have liked. It was just so much. I gave it 4.5. Definitely Throne of Glass, it's a lot of building up in the first few books and a lot of people struggle to get through that, but really once you get to book 3 and book 4, the series kicks up, and once you get to book 5, in my opinion, this was the best book in the entire series. There's so much action in it. There's so much more depth within the characters. You're introduced to a few more characters in the series. You get to see a lot more of Rowan and Aylin's relationship, which mom and dad. And you also get to see a lot of Manon Blackbeak. My other mother. I love her. I'm gonna set these on the floor. Blasphemy. I grew up Southern Baptist and it's a big no-no to put your Bible on the floor, or at least I would get yelled at a lot as a kid if I would accidentally set my Bible on the floor. So for some reason, when I set my books on the floor now, for a hot second there, I feel like I'm doing something really wrong. I'm not. It's just words on paper, but I feel like I'm about to get yelled at. This is one of those 5-star reads where I understand how it would never be a 5-star read for someone else, and I also understand how someone could rate this a 1-star. Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. For some reason, this rom-com has a special place in my heart. I kept my rose-colored glasses on the entire time for this book, and I've read it 3 times now, and every single time I have so much fun with it. Knox, the MMC in this book, is a walking red flag, but I don't give a okay? He's so mean to the point to where if a man ever spoke to me like that in person, I would kick him in the balls and then maybe punch him in the throat. And I'm not an aggressive person, but for some reason it just worked for me and I really loved him. Him and Naomi, I did have to picture them being 10 years younger because they are 40-year-olds or almost 40, and they definitely act like they're like 27-ish. So if you pretend they're younger and you also overlook, what was it, chapter 39? Was it chapter 39? Something with a 9. I'm gonna put the chapter right here. This chapter, there is one sentence in this where I blacked it out of my book because it was no. It was no. It said this and no. I just had so much fun reading it, and that's why I'm okay with saying like I overlooked some of these things. This is definitely my favorite book by Lucy Score. Next we have Happy Place by Emily Henry. This is a second chance romance book, and this is my second favorite book of Emily Henry. Beach Read, which I will be talking about it somewhere in here. Actually, it's next. Beach Read is my favorite Emily Henry book. Happy Place is a close second. This just came out, read this last month. This is my favorite book that I've read this year. Wynn and Harriet, first off, cutest names ever. They were engaged, they broke off their engagement, their friends don't know. Their friends invited them to a weekend getaway at this lake house, beach house that they always would go to as friends, and they don't want to mess up the vibe and they don't want to make anybody feel weird, so they just kind of fake it the entire time that they're still engaged. And this book is so much more than a love story. It has so many deeper themes within it, and I think it even has a lot more deeper themes than Beach Read. I just felt so many emotions while reading this book. It actually made me cry, and most of the time the tears that I was shedding were happy tears or just tears of joy, and then when I got to the end, it was like not even necessarily sad tears. It was just, I just felt so many emotions and I couldn't keep it in my body, so I cried a lot. I'm normally not one who likes second chance romances, so this is one of the only second chance romance books that I actually very much enjoyed. I just love the bare minimum because Wynne says Harriet's name. Doesn't that sound so freaking stupid? She's like, why do you always say my name? Because he's always like, Harriet, 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 do you want to go to the store? Harriet, do you want to do this? Instead of, do you want to go to the store? Does that make sense? He like says her name first. And that got me. That made me immediately fall in love with Wynne in this book. Oh my god, Heather, why did you fall in love with Wynne? Oh, he said her name. The next 5-star read that we have is Beach Read by Emily Henry. This is my favorite Emily Henry book. Like I said, this one doesn't have as many deeper themes like Happy Place does, but it's just such a beautifully written romance. And it's not raunchy romance at all. It's definitely, I mean, there is like one smut scene in it. Is there a smut scene in Happy Place? I don't even know if there was any smut in Happy Place. I know there's one scene like that in here, but it's so much more than smut. It's just a beautifully written romance book. January's dad dies and he left her his beach house. It's more of like a lake house, but it's on like a beach in Michigan. And when she goes to like take over the estate or just goes to the house, she finds out her neighbor is Gus, who was her college rival, or at least she thought they were rivals, but you find out a little bit more later on in the book. Gus and January are kind of polar opposites. They're both writers. They're both there writing for the summer at least, and they start hanging out a lot more. They start finding, did my voice just crack? Oh my god. They are both kind of stuck in their writing process, so they decide to write in the genre the other person writes. So Gus is gonna write more of a romance women's fiction book, and January is gonna write more of a, what the f does Gus write? I don't know what Gus writes. At the end of summer, they're gonna see who wrote the better book. Next, we have Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is one of those books that I understand how people do not like it. This is a fantasy book, but not fantasy in the way Sarah J. Maas is. It has a lot of dark academia aspects to it, which I love. Any books that give dark academia vibes. This book is set in Yale, and they have these kind of underground societies at Yale that, like, I guess normal people, they don't know about them. And it follows Alex. She works as the Dante. Is she the Dante, or is she the Virgil? She's the Dante. Her Virgil is Daniel Arlington, who is missing. But basically the Dante and the Virgil, they're the overseers of the societies, and they kind of make sure everybody is staying in line, doesn't go off the deep end with their magical whatever, and they're just making sure everything's going good. But with Darlington gone, a lot of weird and sketchy things are happening. Someone dies at the beginning. Alex is trying to figure out what's going on. And it's just a wonderfully written fantasy book. I don't know if I described that well, and I'm sorry if I didn't. But know that if you read this book, it's very much a hit or miss. A lot of people say it was too slow for them, which I kind of understand. I've read this book 4 times and I love it so much. I've yet to get tired of it. Next, we have Archer's Voice. This is just a wonderfully written love story by Mia Sheridan. I understand how people think this book is cheesy. I ate the cheesiness up. Bree is kind of running away from her old life, and she goes to this small town where she meets Archer. Archer doesn't speak to anybody in town. His voice box is broken, so he doesn't speak to anybody in town. When I say speak, I also mean like sign language. He doesn't communicate with anybody in any way in town. He's like cut off all communication. He goes into town to get a few things here and there, but he's very much an outcast. And he meets Bree when Bree comes to the town, when she's running away from her old life. And she's very curious about him. She's like, what's going on with him? What's his deal? Why does no one interact with him? Why is he kind of excommunicated? And why doesn't he interact? This is the only Mia Sheridan book that I really like. I don't really like her other books, but this one, something about it just does it for me. And I love Archer Hale so much. Next up, we have Icebreaker. Listen, if you think this book reads like Wattpad, maybe, I don't know, but I love it. It's so fun. It's a rom-com. Don't let the cartoon covers on here fool you. Don't let it fool you. Don't do it. This follows Anastasia and Nathan throughout their time in college. Anastasia is a figure skater and Nathan is a hockey player. It's just a very fun read, and it made me like men. The thing I liked the most about this book is when it introduces the hockey players and the hockey guys. They're like great guys, and I was like, there is hope. Even though they're not real, I was like, these characters are based off somebody that has to be real, and I'm in love with them. Henry in this book, I love that man with my entire heart, and I would do anything for him. He was a side character who will probably get a book in the future, but I loved all the side characters. I loved Anastasia and Nathan. I loved the romance in this book. The smut in it was really good and really well written in my opinion, and I liked how there was multiple conflicts, so you weren't always like wondering when his hit the fan, which I very much enjoyed. I'm gonna include these two together, Twisted Games and Twisted Lies. These are two books in the Twisted series by Anna Huang. How do I classify these? They're not dark romances, they're adult romances. Definitely more adult. Bodyguard, more Princess Diaries romance. Reese and Bridget both can do no wrong. This is my favorite out of the two of these. Twisted Lies, this follows Stella and Christian Harper. It's not every day I like a million or billionaire, however rich he was, but this was just well written and a lot more slow burn than Twisted Games was. I had so much fun reading them. Something about both of these just does it for me. Next up, we have A Court of Mist and Fury. Duh, of course I rated this book 5 stars. What are you talking about? I don't think you could read ACOTAR, get to A Court of Mist and Fury, and be like, that book was because it's not. This is the second book in the ACOTAR series, and it just is. It's just wonderful. Can't give any spoilers. If you haven't read the ACOTAR series, I recommend it. I think it's a very fun series to be a part of. I think the fandom is just a lot of fun, and I love getting to talk about the characters with the people. This is my favorite book out of every book in that series. I'm gonna go ahead and finish off what I have for Sarah J Maas. First off, look at that. I know they're long. I know both of these books are the sizes of Bibles. I get it, I really do. I don't care. Did I eat up every single page? Obviously. This one is just the annotations are stunning. Is it Zootopia fanfiction? Yeah, I've said that multiple times. Are each book like almost 900 pages and that's absurd? Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I ate every single page up. This is a fantasy series by Sarah J Maas, and in my opinion, well actually, okay, I don't know if I like Crescent City more than I like Throne of Glass, but I definitely like Crescent City and Throne of Glass more than I like ACOTAR. They're both just a lot better in my opinion and have a lot more depth. If you've read ACOTAR, you should read Crescent City. I really think you should. I really think you should. The third book comes out next year. I liked how this was a more modern fantasy, and that's something that really shocked me about it. They had cell phones and guns, which was crazy to me. I got into the first book and someone like called someone, and I was like, called? And then they went to the shooting range and I was like, shooting? Why do you have a gun? We have 2 more books. Next we have Carrie Soto is Back. I actually listened to the audiobook of this, and then I ended up buying the book because I loved it so much and I knew I would want to like actually reread it one day. This was my first Taylor Jenkins Reid book, and I can 100% say I love this author. I love the way her writing makes you feel like you're in a totally different world, but the world is real. This followed Carrie Soto, who was a famous tennis player, and I felt like she was a real person. That's how well written this was. And in listening to it, I almost wanted to turn on ESPN every day to check the stats of how Carrie Soto was doing, because that's how immersed into the story I got. I definitely recommend the audiobook. It was a lot of fun. The narrator was amazing. And following Carrie Soto and her tennis journey in her career, you get to watch so much character development happen with her. At the beginning and throughout like certain parts of it, I was like, I can't tell if I hate this woman or if I should be rooting for this woman. I love her. And watching her character development throughout the entire book was just incredible. The last book that we have is Kulti by Mariana Zapata. This is a slow burn romance book. This is my favorite Zapata book. Not just because I love soccer. I grew up playing like very competitive soccer and I have an obsession with it to this day. But this was so much more than that. This was a slow burn romance between Rainier Kulti and Sal, and Kulti is her coach and also her childhood crush. I believe there's like an 11-year age difference, and if you follow soccer, to some people that sounds weird, but for me that's like me falling in love with like Messi nowadays. I believe Messi is like 34, but when he started playing soccer and like professionally, he was probably like 16 or 17 when I first heard his name, and at that point I was a kid, so like it's not weird to me, because I love an age gap romance, and I love an age gap romance and the idea of it in a real life. So I'm almost 24 years old, so that kind of, you know, that's not weird to me. I'm just saying that because she was a childhood fan of his. And then he becomes her coach, and he is an absolute asshat. He's a German bratwurst. What else does she say? She calls him like a Wiener Schnitzel or something. He's a grump. He really is. And following his character development through this book, I'm like, I love you so much, Kulti. I love you so much. I would do anything for this man. But to be completely honest, I would cry in the beginning if he ever spoke to me or interacted with me the way he did with Sal. One thing about Mariana Zapata women is they are stronger than me. Because he would get a kick to the balls after I cried. I would love the idea of a grump, but I really, they make me want to cry. And that's all for my books that I have rated 5 stars. They're all amazing in my opinion. I've loved every single one of them. Obviously, I gave them 5 stars. If you read any of these, let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and TikTok at heaths.bookclub. I need to go see if I can take the period out of it because I hate having to say the period every single time. I will have a new podcast coming out tomorrow on Apple and Spotify, but you haven't seen my bookshelf, and I will see you guys next week. Bye ya!
Let's get out of here.
Hey, darling.